So that's Rahul Mishra, this is Gaurav J. Gupta. So what we want to talk about is, I travel the world with sustainable conferences, and as I said, I talk about Gandhi and fashion, and I realize that when we are talking about sustainability in, say, Europe, especially Scandinavian countries, it's a lot about innovation and technology, which is fantastic. I love it. The fact that they're developing better ways of creating fabrics with crop waste because the technology allows it, or there are going to be ways of recycling which is going to be more efficient because technology allows it, that there are Silicon Valley startups that are collaborating with biotech engineers who are meeting with designers to create smart stitching. I mean, it's endless. So that is extremely exciting, but it does come from a very Western lens, because what happens to countries like India, Indonesia, Cambodia, Asia, which produces most of the clothes for the rest of the world, and we are not so technologically savvy in this field. So I like to bring the topic of cultural sustainability, because the moment we talk about cultural sustainability, it goes straight into the dialogue about what our economy is really about. We are rural economies. 80% of India is villages. We have millions of people who work in the handicraft world. So by supporting handicraft made by hand and going to the root, to rural economy, we are supporters of cultural sustainability. And not to forget, the cultural sustainability is also about passing on these incredible traditions from generation to generation, and with design interventions with designers like Rahul and Gaurav. So you went, for me, what I find interesting is, because where did it start? Like, in the sense that the way it was studied, the way fashion was studied, is actually one of the key reasons why certain designers really move in a different direction when it comes to sustainability. And Rahul, I know you went to NID, and we've had this discussion before. The way this fashion was approached then, even then, was very much about going to grassroots. So we'd love to hear more about that.
Going to NID almost like not the best place to study fashion, and but about textiles and apparel, there was a clear cut, and there was a mandate behind establishing NID during the time of Jawaharlal Nehru, when Popul Jaikar coined this idea how Gujarat is really rich in craft and culture and all that, and NID as an institute can provide design intervention as well as create new products out of existing crafts, and something like that which can help people, so, and craftsmen in that way. So that's why I think during the same time Seva, everything started happening, and that we are talking 1958.
So social impact was built into your education system?
Yes, from day one. So that's why they would, I still remember Aditi Ranjan, like we had, me and Anit, we are from the same batch, Pero, and we would find it very difficult to tell Aditi Ranjan, we will prepare for fashion week, like hidden in that way that we are going in fashion, because for her, craft is the soul of everything. And I still remember first time when I was started, it was a classroom project, when I started working with Kerala Handloom, and my idea was, again, design is a problem solving exercise. So I had to find out problems which I'm trying to solve through my design intervention. So it's a very interesting which you're asking, because it takes me back almost like 12 years back. So I was given Kerala as a state, and one of our leading directors, Dr. Himadri Ghosh, he has allowed us to choose one state and design a collection relevant to that state. When I go to Kerala, all of us are doing clothes for a young girl who goes there, and that's our client profile is for all of us. And I was not finding any opportunity in Kerala. I said, I want to change my state. Maybe Delhi and Bombay will be far more cool to create something good in terms of fashion clothing. He said, you don't want to do Kerala, then you stay with that. You can't change anything now. So that is why I started thinking, I started studying Kerala culture and all that. Then I thought of tourists who visit Kerala, how the tourist can enjoy. One is food, which you enjoy seeing things, and clothing is also one of the most intimate thing. If you enjoy local clothing, probably people are far more welcoming to you, and at the same time it can help weavers also. When I started, I bought some lungis, and I started making some garments of that, and Aditi walked in the classroom and she said, you know what, it's like, is it not very difficult to put on a heart that's such a beautiful woven piece, you're putting a scissors through it? You have to dare a lot in that way. And I remember her reaction was really a bit sarcastic, and we were very scared of her. But still, I end up making clothes reversible and all that. And after the show, she was like, actually, clothes look very nice. And that's what the best thing about design. We keep learning every day.
So just to remind you, please don't forget that this is the beginning of Fashion Week culture in India, right? I mean, this is 20 years back. Fashion Week culture, which meant that no one had any idea what was going on. Suddenly all the fashion designers are clubbed together, and then you have to show in 1 week, and it's like a trade show. And no one was really showing fabric that was handmade, that was cut into pieces that could be worn by women of today. So it was quite eye-opening. It created a big controversy, because it's like, how can you cut the unstitched cloth? So it became, I remember that debate that went on. And so I wanted to ask you, because you did not enjoy, I mean, you weren't into fashion. You didn't study fashion in that sense, but you did go to Chelsea College in London and worked with textile design, and then created all these beautiful fabrics. So you don't have a problem, I mean, because as a textile developer, you curating that yardage, you don't have a problem putting the scissor through it?
Well, we have this joke, so he always used to tell me you should cut, and I would never cut. I still have a problem with cutting, and I'm not a fashion designer. I happened to go to a fashion school, which was completely by accident. So I come from a small city close to Delhi, and just purely by accident I got into fashion, got nothing to do with it. Almost by the time I finished my first degree at NIFT, I still didn't realize what, I just found fashion very intimidating. I think I still do. Then the second degree I did at Chelsea, which was woven textiles, and it was quite interesting because we're talking 2002 to 2005, and to study woven textiles in England is something which, I mean, I was probably the only person who was doing wovens from India in the UK at that time, and I think NIFT had a big role to play, because some of my faculties really pushed me, okay, this is a good school, you should go. And when I moved back, I think, you know, so it's a very different, and I think it's a very good time to be in fashion now, because when I moved back, I was not from, let's say, NID, or even with NIFT, I didn't do the regular program. So I didn't do a main fashion design or a textile design. I went to a course called Fashion Design Information Technology, which was more of a continuing education. So I think there was a huge gap in terms of, you know, we were not really adopted as, we were not a part of the mainstream, basically. And when I moved back, there was nothing here really, and I think I kind of struggled in first 2 years to figure out what to do, in terms of there were no platforms. And an interesting analogy is, if you look at design schools before 2005, and if you look at textile design programs, so the graduate students will not do clothes. You'll very rarely see clothes coming out of grad schools in Indian design schools. It will be only home furnishings. So you would look at textiles as primarily furnishings. And there is, I think 2005, according to me, is a very important year in terms of the timeline, where I think everything changed. So Rahul, Aneet, pretty much I think all the good names now, you know, people are doing interesting work. Most of us started after that. And when I did my first season, again, I didn't want to do fashion. Asha Bakshi, who was the dean at NIFT, she said you should do clothes. So I did clothes, and then she said you should do a show. So I did a show.
What was holding you back? Because I do understand, like, there's a whole batch of you, right? We're talking about Aneet from Pero, both these lovely gentlemen. Because you're straddling two worlds, you're working with textiles that comes traditionally from rural India, but you're catering to a market that is very urban and cosmopolitan. What were the challenges? Because you are literally negotiating between two worlds that really haven't merged. So, I mean, I was in a village 2 days back in Ahmedabad with the embroiderers. It's an alien world compared to the fashion world here. So I would love to hear from both of you, what made you even want to amalgamate the two? Because I know it's a tough journey.
When I first went to Kerala, it was first experience for me. I'm just sharing my journey. I took a train journey over there, and being an ID student, we were entitled with sleeper class. So I had a big complaint because almost 2 days of train journey. I said, like, give me third AC at least. I've got back problem, I want to sleep. But it was not useful because the journey was so beautiful after Goa and beyond. Like I kept sitting on the footrest of the train with with a camera, digital SLR, which digital camera actually, which I got to shoot from NID, kept clicking images. And that was a wonderful journey and complete new universe. Actually, I really feel like all designers, they need to go to villages and spend at least a month over there to be able to realize and understand what small dreams probably sometimes villagers have. Like I went to this weaving cluster where Padma Shri Award winner Master Gopinathan is there. I call him like, I never met Gandhi, but he was the living Gandhi for me. And Master Gopinathan would, he would share stage with like Sachin Tendulkar, Mr. Ambani and everybody, like really wonderful guy. And he lives in a simple dhoti, Niryat Mundu. And what he has done is, he has put 700 women weavers in charge of entire facility in a cooperative society called Ecotex Cooperative Society. It's in Kollail. And the beautiful work what he has done, he has serviced everybody, he trained them in-house, he inculcated managerial skills, he inculcated all the skills which a factory would have. Actually, that place is almost like a handloom factory. Beautiful work what he has done. So that has kind of inspired me. That was my first learning ever to understand how villages are important. The fashion we see from one lens. Then after that, I would say my study to Instituto Marangoni, Milan in Italy, where in Italy, living at Via Monte Napoleano, taking tram every day in front of Armani Casa and all that, helped us to understand like two very diverse words when you look at luxury. And it became a kind of journey. I'm saying still I'm learning, still I'm figuring out, like how do we bridge these two extreme worlds? And for me, like today when I work with, one is the Handloom Weaving Society which I work with, or Hukum Kohli I shared about you, like 10 years back, he used to live in a small hut. Now he has got a 3-story house, a beautiful place, he drives a car. I cannot think about any other profession apart from fashion which can empower somebody who has never gone to school, to able to live his dream, living in the village without stepping out, to able to earn that kind of living. There's example like him. Or there's somebody, Afzal Zariwala, who was working from slum areas in Jijamata and Dharavi and all those areas as an embroiderer, and how we kind of started reverse migrating back these slum dwellers back to the villages. And now, like during recent Couture Week, which I just showcased 2 days back, he had done almost like 90% of the embroidery work over there, which happened. And what he does, he is a composite GST scheme with his 2 of his companies. And today, when he takes back like more than 2 crores from us in a small village called Bondpur in Kolkata, and what he created Bondpur for Woolmark Prize went on to be at Colette in Paris on the front window. I think that was the highest point of my life in terms of seeing that kind of journey.
I think with the artisans, they're proud people. They live in land that they own. They've been growing their own food. They raise their kids as lovingly as urban families do. So my question to you, Gaurav, is what is your level of collaboration with them? I'm saying this because I see a lot of designers who employ their craft and their skills, but it is not collaborative, It is not where you're treating somebody else as a creative brain that can synergize with what they want. So tell us about your level of collaboration.
So when I went to England, I was trained as a studio weaver. So basically we had a loom in the studio, there was no theory. The first day I walked in, they gave me a loom and they gave me a project, that's it. And for the next entire duration of the course, I was weaving myself. So pretty much everything I've done, right from dyeing to making a warp to threading, setting up the loom, weaving. So in a way, I would say I'm more of a weaver rather than a designer, which was the first phase of, let's say, Akaro when I started the studio. So when I came back, I think one of the first things which I realized is I met some weavers in Pragati Maidan. There was some kind of a show, and I kind of liked their work. I thought the quality was very interesting, and we did some work together. And I did a London craft show. Used to be a show in England, very, very prestigious, run by the Crafts Council. So I participated in that. And when I put my stand, I clearly remember Ruchira Ghosh she was with Crafts Council now. She came and she said, is it from Fulia? So I said, yes, I've been working in Fulia. And then someone else came, she said, is this Neeru Kumar? So basically, Indian crafts have a very, very, very strong identity of their own. which really made me sit back and I was just thinking, because I was weaving myself. So my whole challenge was, how can I make them my own and what can I do with it? So one of the first things which I did at Akaro, actually, how the studio started. So I never wanted to do a label, actually. Everything was just accidental. I got a master weaver from Fulia to come to Delhi. Because what I realized was, every time I would go to a village, or when I work in paper, so my work, I see my work a little different in terms of, I work more on the structures and in the core of the fabric rather than, so the first thing you have to understand is, there is something called assembling and there is something called creating. So what we've been doing in Indian textiles, I would say pretty much up until now, from 60s or 70s, is assembling. We don't create, which means we pick up what is available. Depending on our visual aesthetic, we either maximize it or we either minimize it. We add obviously our own to it, and then we cut and stitch and it's ready. Wherein creating involves, right from the beginning, you work at the structure, you look at
molecular
yarns.
level of the yarn.
So what we did was, we got the weaver to the studio, which was a challenge in its own self because they were not really ready. And there was this gentleman who kind of agreed because he thought they probably have something to benefit from me and I have something to benefit from them. So I've had the same weaver for last 10 years. His name is Gopal Basak. We sit next to each other in my studio. It's a live working loom for last 10 years now. If you go on our website, there is a category. The first thing you actually go on Akaro site, it says tour the loom. So you can book a tour and you can actually come to our studio and we'll take you through the process. So I think, worked pretty much in tandem with Gopal in terms of most of my work. And it's been really interesting. I've actually learned a lot, and I think it's a two-way process. So I'm not somebody who would say, and my narrative has never been handlooms or revival or glorifying the Indian textiles, because I think when you talk about sustainability, I think that is the first phase which is done with. We need to go to textile 2.0 or 3.0, which is now pushing the design language of the textiles. I'm sick and tired of looking at the same thing over and over and over again. And I think the weavers are also, so if they really like their craft, which they do, they would love to work with something more interesting, more challenging, and they really, really enjoy when you both sit together and you see, okay, how can we do this? What's new? What can we?
But how do you sort of negotiate in a country where clearly it's getting more and more bifurcated? On the one hand, there's that whole, the bridal takes over, it's so, I know you did your couture show. But you're the one who just told me that even with your couture, and by the way, his over the top is all about embroidery work and craft, and I can very well see one of those beautiful lenga skirts being worn with a little ganji and hitting the dance spots around town. So that's not what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying when I say our country is getting bridalized. I mean, it's so over the top bling. There's the bridalization and the Bollywoodization, and then the other hand, suddenly we become this frugal khadi type. So we are just putting ourselves we are pigeonholing ourselves. So, as if to say, just because you're sustainable doesn't mean you aren't a fun person. So I just feel like with you guys, I see all the fabrics that you work with, and I'm talking about cultural sustainability where you're engaging rural communities, making them participate as collaborators, right? So what is the biggest challenge? Why aren't we making sustainability, that is this amalgamation between rural and urban, why is it still not cool and mainstream in this country?
One example, for example, this is a very personal example. I did not share this with a lot of people. When I was shooting a documentary it's called Warp and Weft, for one of Siddharth Kak's production for National Geographic Channel in 2009. I came across Hukum Kohli over there in Chanderi, living in a small hut, and he had been weaver for 9 generations. And probably he was naming all the possible designers who have been working with Chanderi at that point in time. And why we went to his house during shoot, because Amir and Kareena, almost 6 months back for the promotion 3 Idiots, they had gone to his hut. It was 2009, 2010. We started working with him. That was the first time we as a company also tried to impart knowledge of accounting, business planning and all that. He started a cooperative society called Kabir Sangh, something like that. And then we gave him first check in his life, which he received for almost 21,000 rupees. He started on his own, in his own journey. I had a studio in Bombay. I had in 2013, almost 6 years back, had a split with my partners. We had zero money at the point in time. I had little education loan also which I had to pay back. And I took money from Divya's father, my father, and we both had rented an apartment in Sector 27 in Noida. Hukum had been working with me for like 5 years. The trick is, when we collaborate, we never sign exclusive agreement. They can work with anybody, they can do whatever they like. Second thing in the process, I introduced him to Ratna Krishna Kumar. She was having Paramparic exhibition so that he also gets connected to the market directly. We also introduced him to Mr. Mala Goenka. She had designed one. He started doing design one along with designers over there, along with all of us, Hukum. How it has helped me? It has helped me immensely. Because together we were working, but at the same time like a separate entity. So when I started from zero, he was my first investor. It makes me very emotional. He walked in mid-May with bag full of fabrics, Chanderi fabrics, the fabric worth 16 lakhs rupees. He said, sir, you start a business, give me money whenever you have. So I think that is something which is, which he was my investor, first investor. We invested in him, he invested in us. So today when I look at him 10 years down the line, when I look at him setting up 50 looms, beautiful house, never gone to school, it's an amazing journey. Same thing happened us with Afzal Zariwala. In Bhawanpur, he spends, his people who are working with him over there in a society, they spend in salaries around 2 crores a year. The 2 crores, when it stays in a village, creates a cyclic economy of 20 more crores. That keeps a chai wala inside the village, gas wala, the guy who's selling Dhani Mishra ki shop. So I really feel ultimately if we can employ and take back people back to the village, collaborate with them, train them with the idea of GST and you know, train them with CA, allow them, like my CA who sits with me, his primary job is to make everybody accountings clear in a very, very fine way. Everybody for sure should have social audited done periodically so that everybody go to ESIPF and all that taken care of. Because today we are working with more than actually 1,600 workers. We as a team in Noida, we are like around 100 people. We take care of almost like 10 times more employment all across India at different places. I think this kind of collaboration, which is non-exclusive, which also allows them to plan their own business. And one thing about Indians I can tell you, you give them a small pot along with a stove, they can sell tea worth 1,000 rupees by evening by bribing all the police guys and all that. They are amazing entrepreneurs. And that's the most amazing. They teach us a lot.
But here's what, I mean, you know, you guys obviously work very closely with all the artisans in different villages. So when I was in Gujarat, just 2 days back, right? So we were in the Patan region talking to, in fact, a collective of women embroiderers. And the men are just sitting there doing nothing, not because they don't want to. They have their farmland, but it hasn't rained there 2 years in a row. The land is parched, the wells are drying up. I know it sounds really poetic, but and it's blistering hot. I mean, and they're not sitting there and suffering. They just want designers to look towards them and give them embroidery work so that it can supplement what the men would have brought. Now the men are already literally, I Instagram this, they're literally shuffling their legs because they're like, maybe it's time for us to migrate to overpopulated cities. Where will they come to? It will be the Delhis and the Bombays and Ahmedabad city or whatever. So they're already thinking of that, right? So this whole idea of, when you say reverse migration, you want people to stay back. I think climate change is making it impossible for them to stay back. And I mean, I'm all for rural economy. Like Gandhi believed in it, right? He believed that every village should be treated like a village republic. He didn't believe in a centralized government at that time because every village was like an ecosystem of its own with its own traders, own dyers, own weavers and cobblers, and it was an ecosystem that thrived because of all the activity, economic activity that you're talking about that is facilitated. But from just watching how climate change that has been perpetrated thousands and thousands of miles away from that village is affecting it. So what will reverse migration do?
It's almost like people perceive like it's a very human cycle, grass is always green on the other side. Cities are I would say already are struggling to sustain. You can keep making new flyovers in Delhi, you can keep doing new things in Delhi. God forbid, I don't want to live in a city where even at 7 o'clock, if there's a medical emergency, you are in God's hand, even ambulance cannot reach you. Actually, our city is today also highly unsustainable. You look back 10 years back, how easy the traffic was when we used to crib at that point in time also. But 10 years later, I do not know what is going to happen to cities. I think we have to find ways of, like, I'm doing my bit right now, whatever employing or reverse migrating embroiderers back, trying to keep villagers back and try to show a beautiful side. And we all have to find our ways of getting these people, getting, like, in a way, I would love to, like, that's why my plan, I was speaking to Rajesh also the other day, can we shift to a village and have our setup over there? That's my plan in next 5 years. Go to a beautiful setup, which is a lot more inspiring than Noida or Delhi NCR. No, and, you know, and you have set up so at least we are also not contributing ourselves to the crowd, which is right now living in a city. Our cities are highly unsustainable. Our cities are highly
Our practices are not. How many designers really, like we've got more fashion weeks in this country than, you know, pebbles on a coastline. I mean, I'm just waiting for Bandra Fashion Week to begin in Bombay. That's just
you have a Gurgaon Couture Week.
But we have a handful who are committed to sustainability. And the moment you talk about sustainability, everyone goes, they feel guilty. And I'm like, no, baby steps, man, baby steps, take it easy. Just look at the loop and see where you can inject change, you know? It could be just in your packaging. It could be just finding out that maybe you don't want to use the GMO seeds, cotton coming from that, whatever it takes, baby steps. And so to you, my question, like, where are we lagging? Why are we not sitting up and celebrating sustainability as a global movement that is optimistic, that is happy, that can be fun? I'm wearing something sustainable, it's pretty cool. I don't have to be in a khadi.
So you know, for me, sustainability, I don't believe in the word sustainable as such, because I think you have to go back if you really want to understand it. I was just having a little chat with Bandana ma'am. You have to first understand what does sustainability really mean in terms of, if you break it down, cultural sustainability. Sustainability in Hindi, you have two closest terms to it. You will not, like design, it's very interesting, has no term in Hindi. There's no equivalent of design in Hindi language at all. You know, and it's similar for sustainability. So the closest you would come, there were three, if you could say. So one is called Satat, second would be called Sthirta, and the third would be Aparigraha, what you spoke about. So if you really think it will be all sustainable, it will never be. Because
no, but just by living, there's a carbon footprint.
Yeah,
I get that.
Yeah. So the basic flaw, as he said, like, you know, the cities are unsustainable. I think there is a certain lack of education. If I have to really address this issue, I'll actually go back right to the school level. And it's a huge problem with a country like India. You know, I'll go back to your question of when you were talking about bridalization and Bollywood. As a studio, or as an individual, as a maker, I think I'm very, very proud that I've literally stayed away from Bollywood completely. You cannot show me a single image where we have loaned our clothes to any celebrity in last 12 years, 13 years. You know, so we've never done that. And I think it's individual, it's an individual commitment. It is. So, and if you want to understand what cultural is, you know, so there are three kind of orders in it. So the first is nature, where you have plants and animals, because when you actually are talking about sustainability, that is what you are addressing to. After nature, the second order is social, where you have individuals, you know, human beings. Now, when you are a human, you are obviously, to an extent, greedy, in the sense that you want to really satisfy, you know, your own, so you're consuming, right? And then the third is what you call in Hindi the Brahmand, which is the imagined reality. So these are the realities. So we are in the second and the third, where you really have to see your own, how much are you consuming? It's basically, end of the day, it is about consumption.
Okay, so I get it. I mean, it's an ideology, and I can talk about Atma, Brahma, sustainability. We can go on. I'm just saying, why are designers so damn lazy to make small changes that would, I'm not talking about the two of you, I'm just saying.
No, in a larger,
what does it take I completely get it. You can give me 5 Sanskrit
No,
words
in a
to describe
designer-
it. I'm
for
just saying, what does
designers
it take
also,
for
yeah.
designers to just say, little practices that I'm going to implement that will have an impact? Because here we're talking about individual choices. If I'm telling each one of you, guys, you don't need to buy that much. Just say no. You know, we go on a fast. We come from a country where fasting has been propagated since we were children. Now, intermittent fasting from the Western world is supposed to be the thing. So why can't we go on a fashion fast? Are we going to die if we don't buy that one T-shirt for 3 months? So what can designers do? Are we missing the talk on sustainability because we go into a loop of trying to understand it environmental, societal, cultural, or can we just make little changes in our practices?
We are, and I think as a country, I think we're one of the only countries where we have had it right from the beginning. There are a lot of people, in Indian fashion right now who are trying their best, and I think are doing some amazing work. You have Ambridge here, these guys work, they produce some amazing work. You have Pero, you have Injiri, you have Sanjay, I mean, so many of them. And when you speak about handlooms as such, obviously and then you have Khadi, So I think we are there, we're doing what we can, but a lot of, this is a half ownership. Half of the ownership is true with the consumers also. So I'll give you a very small example. I don't do Bollywood, I don't do PR. How many people know what we do in terms of the moment if I don't? So most of the shows, you have this term called showstopper. You have PR agencies who are glorifying you. Press, I would blame the press for it. I think Indian journalism, fashion journalism, is below standard. And I don't mince my word, and I'm pretty much, I think, on track here. because I think that's the reality. And if you also speak about consumers, if they're not interested in how sustainable it is. A bride wants to look good because there is so much societal pressure on the day of the wedding. You're not really bothered. So it's a 360-degree change, which will come about. I think you have to have faith, you have to be positive, and I think this is one that we're sitting here talking about it is a step in the right direction.
Okay.
I'll just say this, like being in Paris, being in India, and I also teach, go and talk to students and all that. It's a very simple thing. I'm just trying to say right now, what is more sustainable, cotton or polyester? If I ask the same thing in India, 99% people say cotton more sustainable. Whereas in Paris, the answer becomes completely reverse, and they both are right. They both are right. Sustainability somehow, when you're trying to make a definition out of it, based on somebody else's experience, somebody's thought, or some other region, we are doing biggest disservice to sustainability in that way. I really feel like we have to find our own way. Every brand.
Can you explain, because I know that you've done this for me, but it'd be lovely for the audience to hear, the idea that sustainability is subjective, that polyester may be seen as unsustainable in a particular country, but seen sustainable. I would really like you to explain that.
Like for example, a country which has got amazing rainfall, then you are growing cotton, even if you say like 600 liters of water goes into growing the t-shirt, it's fine. We have got abundance of water. We are going cotton over there. We are not taking any underground water. It's organic cotton, absolutely sustainable. On the other hand, a country which does not has that much rainfall, if they start growing cotton, it becomes unsustainable for them. It becomes unsustainable for environment. At the same time, there are two ways of looking at it. One is before life, how things are being created. Second is afterlife of anything, how things are going to last and how they will be recycled. I think somehow we all, like most of the companies are doing, it's called greenwashing when you think of sustainability.
Correct.
Very idea how 60, 70 years back, nobody ever talked about sustainability. I always talk about like one thing, it's called Earth's budget or overshoot budget. How many of you are aware about this? Overshoot budget is now we are finishing, like it's a very scientific mathematical approach. There's no subjectivity about it. Our Earth gives a resource which has to be consumed for entire year. Somehow we are consuming now those resources within 8 months. So what is happening? We are going on bank loan. So we are taking resources. Right now I'm consuming resources which my daughter needs. So this is the problem. With us, producers are primarily more responsible. I said producers, that's designers, all of our responsibility is 90%. All the companies are greedy to produce more and more, have more fashion weeks, have, like now there are internationally 7 fashion weeks out there, like pre-spring, spring. you cannot stop selling. And then a lot of luxury brands, they talk sustainability, they burn their overproduce.
Stock.
They burn their
Millions,
stock, shoes,
millions of
bags,
dollars
and all
worth
that.
of stock.
In Russian, like head of one luxury brand, I'm not going to name right now, he was saying we burn whatever is not sold. We do not even put it in life cycle.
Yes.
So this is really a problem. Why we never, 1957 was the year when we had equilibrium. From that day onwards, we have been consuming resources way too fast. Looking at consumption resources, we should be 2070 right now. We have already consumed resources till the year 2060, 2070. And if I talk about that time, what we have, so we have to start, one is for producers, they have to start producing things slow. One of the reasons as a brand, we only work with hand, we do not touch any machine embroidery for anything, because one hand embroidery for the same amount of work, if I do that machine, it becomes 10 times faster. If I do it computer, it becomes 100 times faster. One thing is that it slows down the process. The way I consume my organzas, I consume way too slower than anybody. One garment, if I create, it takes like 500 human hours. I'm more than happy because it employs more people. On the other hand, a t-shirt, which even I'm wearing right now, is created in almost like, I would say, few minutes of like, so this is a problem. With industrialization, automation brought these problems, the way production was happening. I really feel like we have to look back at last century beginning, how we want to produce fashion, because fashion is second most polluting industry in the world. And looking at the way electric cars and everything making inroads, I think we are going to be by 2030, primary most polluting industry in the world. So it's better fashion designers do talk about that. It's better because, you know, us as a small company, it's very easy to put these things. We are not moving like a juggernaut like H&M or anybody like that. You know, for them to take a U-turn from all these practices, they are going to fall. I really feel like we have to find disruptors. We need to talk more and more about it.
Yep.
And that's the only way of going about it. And we have to, only one way is, Earth is almost like, you have to understand, if you slow down the consumption resources, anything you make, so even for the consumers, it's very, very important whether you buy a lehenga or embroidery or something, try to find a way where you know, I think it might be a good idea, even I was talking to ministry also the other day, to able to talk about the process, the working hours which are gone into every product,
Absolutely.
very well documented, and at the same time, where the yarn is coming, entire information should be there, the way we consume things,
The thing is,
the way we eat, the way food is done.
Since you criticize the media and journalists, I'm going to agree. I'm going to agree with you, because here we are saying it is fine to belong to the slow fashion movement. We are happy to pay value for it. So this is not about getting a lehenga for $10. Not possible if there's all that craft involved, right? The idea that more is not better, bigger is not better, right? But in all this, media lags behind in the storytelling. We've not been introduced, like I've worked with magazines, I'm sure there are lots of journalists here who work with big publications, and we know for a fact that the storytelling is from a very Western perspective, not an Asian perspective, where it's people, hands, faces, hundreds of hands go into that kind of craft that's been done. So our whole storytelling as journalists has been flawed, because we never put the process in front of the product. And the whole idea of me hanging on to the clothes that you make, the beautiful fabric that you've collaborated with, put your R&D and put metal into zari and whatever you've done, I want to hold on to it. I want to pay the right value for it, because I know that trickles down to giving value to the artisans, right?
So I think, you know, there is a huge space, I think, in Indian fashion. So also if you look at it, there has only been a rise and rise and rise of crafts in India. The designers who are working with crafts are actually growing. So there were designers who were working, I won't give you names, I mean, obviously everyone knows. For a time being, I can be diplomatic. No, so what I'm trying to say is, everyone is realizing how important it is, and you know, there is a connecting, it's connecting with the consumers, the idea, you know. So there are bigger brands. You have Anita Dongre now doing so much, you were with her, you know, there's, Manish Malhotra did a sustainable show, handloom show. You know, so everyone is switching. So at least I think there is some sense which is...
Yeah, my problem is it can't just be like a perfunctory, you know, seeking for sustainability. Like magazines do this, right? Oh, my September issue is going to be a sustainable issue. And the next 11 months, not a squeak. Like as if, so we can't treat sustainability as a trend. They're saying in 10 years we won't have dolphins. I mean, come on, let's wake up to the reality. So for me, too, and for a lot of people, everyone is here because you want to be part of this dialogue. Even designers need to commit. I'm just saying, like, it's overwhelming when you say change everything. That's not the point. But the commitment that it's a long-term journey and sustained changes over time, as opposed to making one capsule collection or doing one issue in a magazine.
I'll give you one example, very small example. So you know, when we dispatch the clothes to any exhibit, any store, anywhere, all the designers use something called a panni, which is like a plastic cover, right? So if I have an exhibit, let's say in Chennai, so Chennai have come up with a policy where you can't get anything in Chennai with a plastic cover now.
Excellent.
So you can't do it. So the stores have actually sent emails to everyone saying that you have to rechange your packaging. We've been looking at it for a very, very long time in terms of how do we do the packaging, you know, because we are consuming plastic. So we've been looking for a biodegradable plastic. Now, I mean, I won't go into the technicals because that's another topic altogether. Another very small thing, we have so much clients who come to the studio. You know, it's a very, very small example. If I give them a glass of water in a glass, they don't want to drink it. Now, for everyone, I have to get a small Bisleri water, you know, bottle.
Yeah.
And it's plastic. You're almost buying what, like 30 bottles
That's
a day.
because they think it's not clean, the glass?
Yeah, so these are small little steps, and also you have to sanitize your team. Like within my own team, you know, I have field boys, so we do it.
But this is such a cultural thing because, you know, juta.
Yeah,
we're so particular about, I'm not going to drink from the glass that you've drunk from, not for anything, but from childhood we've been told we don't do juta. Just in the same way, second-hand clothing is it's going to grow exponentially.
So
They're
we've
saying it'll
rented.
beat even fast fashion very soon. But
You've
in
rented
India, there is
agencies.
such a big problem with second-hand clothing, because second-hand, someone else wore it. It's like, you know, there's a stigma to it. But world over, the one thing that is going to save, and everyone can participate in consuming less, is going to be using second-hand clothing.
10 years back, before the big advertising for these water bottles started, everybody was taking water in glasses. So actually, it's all about the ROs ads made you feel that you are drinking most unhealthy things, or these water bottles, packaged water bottles. It's a big industry. You have to fight really a big industry to change the mindset, because they are changing mindset like this. If you're not buying a new phone, you're not cool enough.
Right.
And your camera is like really bad. Like I use iPhone 6 right now. So my entire team, assistants and all that interns, they iPhone 10X and all that, and they say, oh, how can you use this phone? This is like so much better. I said, mine is working fine. I don't want to change it.
So, okay. So the last section of our conversation is going to be go right back to cultural sustainability. And so I have a very dear friend who is an amazing Romanian lawyer, and she realized, we all know, cultural appropriation is the hot topic, because big brands are taking from age-old cultures and not giving credit, right? So there are cases of a Romanian beautiful blouse that is literally a heritage piece, put straight on the ramps of a very famous Parisian brand, and what happens is it becomes a patent and then belongs to the designer, and there's no royalty, nothing that goes to the grandmothers who are actually sewing it, and I'm talking a ditto garment that is being copied and put on the ramp. So she is starting something called, well, we are all championing something called, so we all know about intellectual property rights. This is cultural intellectual property rights, started by a wonderful woman called Monica. And she comes to India a lot, and you are going to meet her. So she proposes something called the triple C when working with crafts and indigenous techniques or real silhouettes that come from our heritage or any cultural heritage, whether it's Mexico, Romania, India. And the 3 C's is, and I want your comment on it because you guys are the designers: consent, which you get permission to be able to use it; credit, the due credit that these are the craftspeople who made whatever; and compensation. So there is monetary value to it. What do you think about that? Are these three C's achievable when we talk about being inspired by rich cultures like ours? And it's a very important conversation because we do have international designers that dip into the cultural heritage of countries like this that are deeply seated in traditions.
I really feel like even fourth C should also be like collaborative, and fifth C commercials. So compensation takes care of that. Just compensation is not good enough. I think collaboration, taking it to next level, is something. Like for example, it's a very, very difficult thing because one is there's a community which is working on that. Just Chanderi alone, if there are 500 weavers, and even I know as many times I can go there, but still it will be very difficult even for me to able to recognize also all 500 together. So actually the more important thing is you have to respect the region, and somebody who is at least one person becomes a face of that. Like for example, for me, Hukum Koli becomes a face of that. So this is always there. Always there going to be one leader within any community, and he will take initiatives, take the risk of sometimes, getting bank loan, his papers all right, and all that kind of thing which always happens. He's going to mobilize people to bring them on. So this is always going to be there. Because in a country where probably one family owns a craft, it might be easier to have credit as well as everything going, consent, everything. But when you're craft-oriented country, like just a small village, Pranpur, 5,000 weavers are there. And it's a knowledge which you share from generations, interchange from each other. And if you go to the houses, like I've seen, they also keep accusing, not the designer, each other for copying each other's sari. My Kareena Kapoor sari, that guy has taken, he has started making motif and all that. So there is something within villages.
Does that mean the government needs to be involved? Because I'll tell you why. When a very top international brand copied a Mexican design, the Mexican government intervened.
So see, the government eventually,
we do have something called geographical identification,
GI tag.
GI rights.
We have a GI
so
tag.
those are in place. So these rights should protect. So that's what I'm saying. When we are working with a craft cluster, it's very, very important. Like from day one, from a collection, whether it's Kerala or talking about Master Gopinathan and all that, it started happening. That's how it was inculcated from NID. But to be able to name all 700 women weavers, to be able to map them, who is weaving at what level, and like sometimes one garment might have mundus which are woven by 5 different people.
Right.
So that becomes
Imagine
really
an international design on the ramps, took the mundu and did an entire collection and did not give credit to Kerala.
I saw the presentation which Monica did. So basically, see, there are again two parts to it. One is locally what we've been doing in India with textiles. So in India, what we call is Banarasi, Chanderi, Maheshwari, Kerala Mundu. Now, what is Chanderi? Chanderi is the name of a village, right?
Correct.
So when you weave, the basic Chanderi fabric is a cotton and silk. Now, I don't weave cotton and silk in Chanderi. So I do, there is a technical term to it. It could be just the ingredient. So for example, you having a dosa, you would say, what do you put in it? Is it a masala dosa? Is it a paneer dosa? Is it a cheese dosa?
But it's still a dosa from South India.
Yeah, so same.
It's not big.
Yeah, so what happens is when you are doing an intervention in terms of you're adding your own, right? So you are obviously deviating from what's been going on. Now the GI tag is definitely something which you use.
Can you tell us what GI stands for?
So GI tag is geographical indication of the craft.
Right.
So these are homogeneous crafts. So India is probably the only country where you have so much craft left. And one of the important things which I actually want to talk about is a term which we completely miss in India. Is called not designer, not craftsman, it's called designer maker. So in the UK and in Europe, designer maker is a very, very prominent term because their crafts have almost been wiped out from their cities and they've been brought into the studios. Right? So there is a designer maker where you're actually studying craft in the studio, which might happen here again in another 10, 15, 20 years.
It doesn't exist in villages.
I mean, in the cities, so it's, so because it's become like a luxury in the sense, and that's why it is a luxury, it's a one-off, so, and I think the same thing is going to happen here because what are you really paying when he speaks about reverse migration and when you talk about why do they want to move to the cities? So you need to understand weaving is the most, so out of all the disciplines, everything, you can pick up anything. You have 3 basics, which is the roti, kapda, makan. In kapda, then you have 4 disciplines in which you have weaving as one, is the most laborious physically. You don't want to break your back for 12,000 rupees
There's a
when you have
tendency
a
to romanticize.
when you have a security guard just sitting there not doing anything, getting a 15,000 rupees in uniform. So the first thing is, I think that is a very, very important aspect of that. And GI tag is something which obviously from the government of India also has done the intervention. But personally what I think is, I think we in India carry a baggage of the entire, pre and post independence and the whole system of what the craft is. So for example, khadi. Do we even know where the term khadi comes from? When did it start? So I'm not really well read about this, but I personally think khadi comes from khaddar, khaddar comes from khaddi, which is actually the loom. So it's your personal interest which you'll take.
While you're saying this, I mean, you are a designer, so you deep dive into it. Okay, but I feel with khadi, and when we talk about sustainability, we think khadi first, and then you're thinking of hemp and whatever. Do we have a problem with designers keeping it, when you talk about sustainability and it becomes khadi, they get very, it's reverence, because khadi has such a political history with us, so they feel that they can't have fun with it. You can't really, is that the reason why we have a certain uniform for sustainability in India?
No.
It has to be beige, number one, let me tell you. It has to be beige, it has to be anti-fit. It's pretty unwelcoming to wear sometimes, even though I love the story behind it. And I know there's so much sort of design intervention going on. What you do in your lab, for instance, where the khadi becomes softer and softer, but no one is joyous about making
We make bridal lehengas on khadi.
Because I feel that we carry a baggage, as you were saying, we
No, we
carry
do.
a baggage of sustainability being entrenched in our, our freedom movement and Gandhi.
I think the basic and only one answer which I have to this is, I think we don't know enough. It's not about you don't want to, it's just that you don't know. So I'll give you another very funny story from my NIF days. When I graduated in 2002, I did a project, my final project was on creative weaving, where I used a lot of copper. That's how my metal story started. And there is a very interesting incident to it. So my uncle used to run in my extended family a factory in Panipat, which was handlooms. And my teacher was somebody called Balbir, who was a textile designer. So I wanted to do weave, and I didn't know anything. And they said, okay, you go for your final project, make fabrics. I had no money. They said, you'll only get the factory on a Sunday for 3 hours. I literally had no money. They said, we have a waste yardage left on the loom, which you can use. Now, there were electric wires which were thrown around, waste. We pulled out the copper and we wove that. They listened to a lot of music. There were audio cassette tapes in those days. So we actually took the tape out and we wove that. So basically, let's say I did a series of 15 fabrics and I did yardages. Now, I myself didn't know what I was doing. FDC, I did a show called Fibers of Fashion, which was only catering to textiles at that time, and it's 2002, and I clearly remember they gave me a stall. Sudha Dhingra gave me a stall from NIFT. We were given a free stall, and I exhibited. I had a semicircle of journalists like this. Oh wow, it's great. What have you done? I didn't know myself what have I done. They didn't know what they're asking, So we were both like clueless. It's the same story now. I can give you in writing, most of us, including me also, I think we don't know enough about the medium. As in how we engage with the medium, I think it's going to grow. But I will again go back and to say that we need more forums like these, and we need more content, we need more literature, and we need the right information. There is a lot of uneducation where, for my shows also, my reviews are done saying the print was very nice. I've never done print in my life. It's actually a weave. So, and then there are also designers who have nothing to do with this, and suddenly they're the poster,
Well, I know designers do collections that's green in color and they call it.
Yeah, so it's not about who's the final authority. It's about uneducating. You're misleading the larger audience.
Which is a shame, because the joy of having YouTube and Google now and being able to educate yourself. Trust me, I didn't go to a sustainable school or college or went for a program. I learned on the job, running on my feet. I mean, it's doable. Anyway, this is not about me. I'm going to ask the last question, because we're talking about cultural sustainability. We're talking about how, the West comes here and takes great artisanal skills, and they don't give enough credit. A lot of Indian designers do the same thing. It's not like, so as designers, where does inspiration end and plagiarism begin?
Before answering that, I want to also tell you something. My friend Ramesh Menon and Alpi, they had gone to Kerala for after floods, like really massive floods last year, which happened at the same time, Chedamangalam Weaving Society. They started a society called Save the Loom. So because it's a kind of like
Save the Loom project, yeah.
11th show for me in Paris Fashion Week. I wanted to do.
Everyone does it. We all know what Save the Loom project is about. The Kerala floods happened. The looms, the hand looms were destroyed. And so there was Save the Loom project that went viral and crowdfunded to reinstate the looms and give back dignity of labor to the ones who had lost their jobs.
And yesterday, he sent me, like, when you talk about like wages altogether. So yesterday he sent me a document, like who are the people who are working. I asked him for the entire profile. He sent me a document. That's what I was reading right now on my phone. To my surprise, one number which attracted me the most, and I felt really sad about this, the weavers are still being paid 150 rupees a day for weaving over there. That's like, with extreme proud, I always say my all embroiderers, they earn around 20,000 rupees a month. They are socially protected. Like one of my recent embroider who just joined us, he had a very acute problem in kidney stone. He was treated for 15 days in ICU at Kailash Hospital. His medical bill would have been 40-50 lakhs, but he didn't have to pay anything. And still he was paid when he was absent. But in the weaving societies, my problem is, when can we have that fair wages or minimum wages? Like, I'm just sharing this with you. I'm actually on Handloom Day. I'm sitting like this with the Textile Minister.
Again, Handloom Day
talking
is
about the
Black
entire
Fashion
thing. So this is going to be one thing which I want to find answer from everybody, all of us. Like, when I looked at that figure which Ramesh has sent me in a comprehensive document, what they have done, what the efforts they have done, they have recognized really a lot. Where can we find a person for a humble cotton, 120s or 80s count cotton, who is ready to pay extra money, where weavers are paid at least minimum as a 400 to 500 rupees a day. That should be the minimum wages which you need to look at weavers, and that's where I really feel government as well as all of us, we need to not wait for government for this to happen. We need to self-sanction ourselves in saying this is the wage which has to happen, and that's what we also do. We always like have
Why should the government intervene? Only when it becomes some sort of a law, then people listen. Otherwise, I understand. Everyone doesn't have a high conscience like you.
It's not about that. Like, if you're supplying anywhere, like Saks Fifth Avenue, they have a social audit team which comes and they record everything, minimum wages, local law, and all that. A lot of times, like, it's not that I really want to do that. I have to do that. And then I found a way of doing it. I understood how profitable it is to get things done for people who are happy about doing things and people who are earning well out of these things. So ultimately, this also boils down, like today we have got certain size of business which can also help. We can take services of these kind of agencies. Like there's a Dr. Khan has got an agency called Ask India, the SGS and all that. I think from our side also, it's very, very important to keep an audit and quality check. Like we have a QC team. We need to have similar kind of system within our organization which kind of also checks happiness index, sanitation. All these also really, really important thing when we talk of sustainability. It's not about just choosing organic.
Sustainability has 3 pillars, right? There's the environmental, of course. Then there is societal, and there is, what's the third one? Governance. Economic. And cultural sustainability is what people are saying now. It needs the 4th pillar, because especially it applies so much to countries like ours. Now, last question, which you completely veered off track.
Sorry. Yeah.
Which is,
and plagiarism.
when does inspiration end and plagiarism begin? And I'm talking in terms of using craft to any kind of, mostly craft.
A lot of times, like, that's what I'm saying, like, one is obviously giving due credit to whatever inspired you, even book, even a painter. That should be part of the write-up. As a designer, I always like and this, even at the college level, we need to inculcate it when they show a mood board image, even if it's a Pinterest or anywhere, they should give a credit even for the mood board picture, where it is from and all that, which usually does not happen. Like we even give, like sometimes we supply even photographer's name who's taking the picture. Media people, when they talk about plagiarism so much, they forget to put even photographer's name over there. Even the source images, if we are trying to give them, it doesn't
Forget about
happen.
photographers, you. When does it end? When would you draw where would you draw the line?
I really feel like one is like this season, for example, for this collection, we started doing, like we were trying to do everything in-house. Every artwork also in-house. That's where the level of deep, creativity which we want to get into, and that's what the future for a brand is also. And we take very small aspects, like maybe, architectural surface of Taj Mahal and all that, and then you have to give credit. That's one thing. But plagiarism is a big problem. I just, like every day I keep receiving messages. There's some shop close by in Chandni Chowk which sells all of us at almost one for the price, everything computer embroidered. Everything computer embroidered. All the pieces. I walked in my fittings at Taj Hotel. From the Capital Kitchen, I could see like one woman walk in, a replica of one of the dupattas which I created. And all like, because we do all our artworks in-house, and she was wearing probably a little thicker thread because it was done on computer or something. And we see it every day happening. It is quite painful. At the same time, when a designer feels a big pain about it, while he's creating it, he should be very, very conscious about it. Second thing which I want to say, in an age of social media and Instagram and all that, I always tell this to my team as well as to myself every time. It's a very good tool for creative consumption. But for creativity, for creating something original, this is the worst time to create something really original. There's so much impact, so many things happening, so many shows happening, and I do not know how do I do that. I'm going to name one designer here, Virgil Abloh.
Virgil Abloh, yeah.
Almost every second thing, the way he celebrated, nobody says anything. Even some of gods of fashion also celebrate him. And internationally that's happening. Why do we talk about Indian fashion standard? I saw his packaging, one of my very dear friend, he has got a brand called Enrelage. You should follow him, like he's really genius. He, a Japanese brand, even packaging has been copied. Only thing is, Mr. Virgil Abloh has got about 5 million followers, and this guy has got 50,000 followers. So 5 million followers, guy is the most creative guy out there. So that's the problem. And he is like, look at, I think plagiarism is very rewarding.
For them.
Well, as they said that steal always, that's a good thing to do. But no, so I think it gets copied. So there are, whatever, I'm actually very slow with what I do. And I don't think you can keep getting inspired. I think when you finish a show and then they say, what's your inspiration? I'm like, no inspiration, sorry. Because how can you be inspired all the time? It's a term which you use in fashion. This is my inspiration. It's like my movie is different, So I was just telling you outside. So what I've actually started doing now is I've started working on longer projects where, and we've maintained archive, I think, right from the student days, because I think that's the way. One good thing, I think, being born not as a millennial, I think, in early 80s is that the systems in the school, design schools, were still intact. Our teachers were very, very strict, be it NID, NIFT, wherever. We've been taught all those things. So right from my NIFT, then Chelsea, then now, up till, let's say, the last season, what I've done, if you pick the work, you will see a progression. It's not referred and borrowed. Now, I think it's a very individual thing, because I'm not somebody who would get bogged down by, he's doing 20 crores, someone else is doing 40 crores, I've still not gone 5. You have to have good confidence in yourself with what you're doing. And I think in longer run, especially in today's time, content is what's going to win. You can keep creating collections, you can be big at some point of time, it doesn't really matter. So as far as inspiration is concerned, so right now we started the next project which we are coming up with is, it was started in 2017 on Yves Klein Blue. And it's 2 years already, we are still working on it. Because I think also now people want to see things which are complete. So, the whole terms of, we have this tendency in India, which is again a hangover from the colonized times, which is very Western. So you use the term, some brands use pre-fall. I'm like, what is pre-fall? Indian markets work, Rakhi, Diwali, right? That's your drops in the market. So what is pre-fall? Like, what is, I don't understand that, So
yeah, I think the need to sort of take ownership over our own language
Everything.
Because we are defined by our geography. We are defined by
So
our
we have our
design
own.
aesthetic.
So I got a frantic call day before at 12:30 at night. This friend of mine, she's in Ahmedabad, just starting a new label. She said, "Oh, I have something urgent. I'm dying. I'm dying." I said, "What happened?" She says, "You know, I worked with a student from NID, second year, who does prints, and I commissioned her, so she paid her. And when I posted on Instagram, I didn't give the credit, and now she's shouting." So I like, okay, I don't understand. Again, you know, so I say, when you've paid somebody. So there are two things to it. You know, when you've paid somebody, and it's a question. I mean, maybe you guys can tell me. You know.
We have a Q&A after this.
Yeah. So when you pay people, if I've commissioned somebody, you know, I have the copyright for that. In that sense, if I actually look down at that. So if I'm not giving you credit, we have already agreed, and we have a consent that you're doing it for me. I've commissioned you. So that's gone. Now, second is when I'm working with a weaver, if I'm only using the skill set, because I was reading somewhere they say, oh, you know, everyone wants to put their own thoughts and tell them to the weavers. When did handloom really became so big and became cool in India? You know, I'm not taking the credit from the craftsmen also. There are two parts to it. We cannot forget it. You know, there are some master weavers.
What are the two parts?
So my master weaver, like the guy I work with, his son has actually studied at NIFT. They're doing their own thing, so they're independent, they understand. Within the crafts community also, there is a hierarchy. You know, there are people who make a lot of money, there are people who control the whole system.
So are you saying that if you pay for the service, that's good enough too?
Yeah, I mean, if it's sometimes, I mean, if you've agreed, and you know, this whole thing of, I'm not being credited, you know, I mean, I understand, you know, I'm not saying that you shouldn't. And even like, if you look at Instagram, there are some labels where, you know, what happens is you copy someone's, it's not a copying actually, you put someone's work and you say, that's our mood, that's something. You do it once in a while, it's fine. If you are actually doing it as a strategy, don't you think it's a plagiarism? Because a layman who's looking at an image don't really know, and nobody reads. They only look at it khatak, you know, it's like, you don't have that much time. So I think it's a larger discussion, and again, it has its own...
It certainly is.
I want to ask you something.
Wait, we have to get into a Q&A now.
I want to ask you something quickly, which was like, when I was obviously like beginning my career in India, we had the similar kind of complaints about the system, and we always thought the grass is greener on the side. When you go out of India, things are going to be a bit more different. Yeah. Now, amongst like all the young brands at Paris Fashion Week Showcase, we all sit together. We had the similar kind of questions. When you look at LVMH starting a label with Rihanna, we were struggling with Bollywood here.
Yeah.
And that's their Kanye West doing probably.
I think they're following suit.
Probably one of the biggest things. So what do you think about this? Like, what is happening to fashion right now? Where modeling is also driven by how many Instagram clicks somebody has, and maybe they model the best models.
I think it's just diluted the craft and the art of design. Look at all the big designers today. If you're not collaborating, everyone's not existing as purists anymore. Like, if you're going to find the Hussein Chalains and Issey Miyakis of today, like, you're really going to scrounge around, because now the so-called the millennial-loving designers are constantly collaborating. They're collaborating with graffiti artists, they're collaborating with sneakers done by an artist who also used to be an architect. As much as I personally love cross-pollination of different artistic disciplines, I really am beginning to see that design for design's sake, it's not there as much as it was. The purity of it, I'm sounding quite sanctimonious about it, because I do like cross-pollination and hyphenated human beings.
What are the media and advertising and everything, the way everything happens internationally, even more worse than India?
Of course it is, and we are following those routes that are defined by the biggest.
But I think cross-pollination happens here, and even so I would like to actually mention Rajesh here. You know, I think a lot of
Rajesh Pratap Singh.
So I think
we think it's just three of us.
Sorry, Rajesh Pratap Singh. So I think a lot of what I'm doing from my early time has a lot to do with Rajesh also, because sometimes you lose confidence, you're struggling, you find it very, very hard. And then you look at someone, and then, he once walked into my booth and he said, okay, that's fine, you have time, and it's like you need to have role models, you need to have references who have really, I think what I have to give it to him for is he has really stood by what he believes in. And there is a lot of, like, he does a lot of cross-pollination, I do a lot of cross. So there are people, but I think a lot of it is also not written and spoken about. There are some amazing designers in India you probably not know in the mainstream. I mean, they're doing quietly their job, they're doing some amazing work.
On that note, Q&A time. If you have questions for any of us, certainly the designers.
So my question would be, you were talking about the number of fashion weeks happening. Why do you have to go in each one of them? Why can't you just do one and be done with it?
Individually they do one, yeah.
Or, I mean, why do you need to go international? Why not get the international here?
I always thought like that. Maybe India is going to be in Big Four one day and all that. But actually, when you look at the calendar of International Fashion Week, it's a chance that they might be Big Three, not Big Five at all, internationally.
They've already called off, there is no fashion week in Sweden now. So they say it's not.
Paris is obviously, like, when you think about the international audience, when you think about like everybody around the globe following you, Paris has been one of the most evolved country, as well as at the same time fashion is. Like when I do shows here, as well as when I do shows over there, I'm just going to very simple difference. I have got like everybody, even likes of Suzy Menkes requesting for invite in India with 50,000 requests. Even a blogger may not turn up. So that's the difference between fashion seriousness in terms of audiences also about here. She has been like such senior, but she has not missed even a show. Even if I've done on third floor, she will climb up and reach over there like a student to learn about how the garments look like. And she, like, so that's the difference. Like, I really feel like that's where we really feel very lucky to be able to showcase over there when people have a strong seriousness and standing of fashion internationally. And I'm talking about 2 shows within back-to-back 20 days away in that way.
I'm just going to say this quickly because I know the question was for them. The fact of the matter is, in India, we've also diluted the whole idea of Fashion Week. It's supposed to be a trade show, but now it's like Kingfisher will sponsor, whatever. You don't go to Paris Fashion Week and you don't have some, mineral water brand sponsoring a show. They keep it as a trade event. It is important for our Indian designers to have an international platform to be able to show our craft, our expertise, because we also get stereotyped as a nation of elephants and snake charmers and what have you. And here we are talking about 5,000 years of history, and they're the beneficiaries of education system, design and culture, and it's wonderful that they have the international platform. The problem with our own country is that there are too many, and they're too many because it's a marketing gimmick for every Tom, Dick and Harry to participate in a very visual medium. So it's not about design. It's not about how you're dressing up men and women of today and tomorrow. It's about girls walking the ramp. It's a flesh trade. It's just been viled to a huge extent. I'm not saying this about all fashion weeks, but there is propensity to take fashion and make it into some sort of a tamasha, Yeah.
I'm Shweta Gandhi. I'm the senior fashion writer at Vogue. This question is for all 3 of you. So you touched upon the topic of fair wages, and you mentioned that Ramesh Menon is, he's not paying, but like the weavers are paid 150 rupees a day. And Gaurav, you said that weaving is one of the most labor-intensive forms out there. So I want to understand, like in the UK, we have minimum wage rates. So how do we implement, or as a designer, how do we implement like fair wages for the artisans? And what is the point of design intervention if artisans at the end of the day are going to migrate to cities to find better jobs?
So see, as a business, generally I've never really bargained with my weavers, and I have stuck to. But I could be an exception because I also bear the burn and loss of business. I'm not that scaled up organization as such. I'm more of a studio format brand. But for the first 5 years of my practice, I only stuck with one group of weavers in Fulia. And Fulia was the toughest cluster to sell at that time because Fulia actually became popular around 2014-15. Most of the people pick up silks from Fulia, or otherwise some Japanese brands would work. And I'm talking, even in one cluster, there are degrees of work. You could pick a plain fabric, which is Chanderi. You can pick a very, very ornamental fabric again, which is again from Chanderi. So as far as I think the quality of the work which I get justify the price which they're asking for, I would obviously pay. And then I think minimum wages technically has to be at the government's space in terms of they need to decide and what.
And every state has got a, but the problem happens with society. And again, Ramesh Menon has just started and he wants to improve. What he's told me that Rahul, when you are again touching on Kerala, I would like so that two of us can work together in increasing the minimum wages gradually so that people have been so far being paid less than 150 rupees a day. And most of the weaving societies, that has been one of the things which is there. So my idea is, and one more thing is in Kerala, when people ultimately consumer has to react to that, societies need to have enough money. There are a lot of there's a government has started one thing called CSR for anybody who has got turnover or profits beyond certain limit. But what is happening in that also, most of the people, they have their own NGOs now, most of the corporate houses. They have their own foundations. So this money which would ideally go to societies which are employing people, remember that. Why 150 rupees a day is there? Because there's nobody buying the mundu and there's no demand. It's a clear-cut demand and supply ratio. So if as a designer, if I can increase demand over there, obviously the trickle-down effect is going to happen on better wages. And we all have to start consuming fashion, which is a bit more, employment-friendly, a bit more sustainable for society and all that. So it's a little complex situation. But there is a minimum wage rule, but probably that is not applicable to a lot of societies which are run by state governments. And these are societies run by state government. Individuals do not run them.
There is there's something called the Handloom School. I think they have a booth also upstairs called Reva. So what Handloom School does is they train the weavers. So we worked very briefly with two of the guys who graduated. So when they're being trained, they're also being taught how to do the costings of what they're making. So it's a part and process of the weavers training education, so they know what they're doing, because I think the weaver themselves also need to understand, and I think a lot of them do now. They take pride in what they do. So I think, yeah, as you said, it's kind of a circular thing.
Are we actually creating anything for millennials? Because when they come to school, they're talking about, you are an aspiration for them. And when we are doing client profiling, it's always like they look up to you and everything ends up as being super expensive. And on one side, we are talking about cultural sustainability, so everything just becomes out of reach, and it is so blown up. Are you guys making something which the youngsters can afford easily and celebrate design?
It's a catch-22, I think, but what we are doing is, so not keeping millennials in mind, but one of the things which we've been doing for a very long time, but now a little seriously, is we have there is an entry point in the brand in terms of the pricing. So you have small accessories or products which starts from 3,000 rupees and then it goes up. But I don't think I can ever make a garment which will be beyond a certain price point. I think that's we just can't do it.
We've got good news, I've collaborated with, I'm consultant with Raymond's, one initiative called Story Respun, which is a Khadi project. So in that way, because it's all about scaling things up. So think about Raymond giving with fair wages, because they are also completely socially audited firm with fair wages, producing large amount of fabric which we cannot produce as a designer in bulk. And then where we can save costing is how to construct those garments. So it's in a way, I would say sustainability can be approached when we join technology with craft and culture. Something which is produced on a very old method of weaving, but it is tailored in a most modern way to get that thing at a better price and all that. And probably very soon we'll be able to see a lot of wonderful things which are happening, because our expertise with limited number of people we work with, highly skilled people we work with, will not be possible to bring down the price, because we have to ultimately pay them. So I think with these giants like Raymond and Reliance and all that, which I've been working with, so we are just changing giants' heart, and probably one day with H&M and Zara's also, we'll do even 10% of the production happens in handloom. I think a handloom industry is going to be amazing. Designers still are not able to impact that much. Designers can impact with a thought, and that's the most important thing I would say.
Actually, Rahul, this is the perfect cue to my question. Bandana spoke about the life cycle of a garment, right? Or, the time she was mentioning the T-shirt and the story about a T-shirt. So what do you both think about surplus textiles? From studio to large format.
I spoke a lot of time in Pearl also as well, Marangoni, whenever I had gone there. I talked about, we look at client profile, can we not start designing something, a system, which I was asking because I could not do that. That's an idea which we all need to share, where actually a group of students, they start a smallest startup company, they start collecting after sale whatever is left over from the companies like Zara's, H&M and all that, all the giants, or Pantaloon and all these companies, and they redesign it, rebottle it, make it more creative and fun, where 10% space of these companies also, these retailers will provide them to redisplay those things. Like the T-shirt which is left over. There's nothing wrong with T-shirt. It's a simple new logo, new punchline, or probably just a bit of embroidery somewhere, which might make T-shirt look so cool for millennials. So they are wonderful ideas. Like with a lot of students I've discussed, and I know one group in Paris was already thinking about it. One group in Marangoni in Paris, and they were pitching something like that to H&M. What is the surplus? Because it's difficult for them on local level to again transport the surplus back in truck to the sorting facility, again do that, big headache. So there can be collection, there can be localized thing like that, localized group. They, people create beautiful graffitis and all that. They can create beautiful things with leftover stock, create really cool pieces, and that might solve the problem. Then, to run high rents for Zara and H&M, they do not have to extra produce things. They might recycle old things. So that's maybe, the kind of cool...
This is upcycle.
Yeah, jacket. So it's all about upcycling those existing pieces which are not able to move even after sales.
But what about you, Rahul and Gaurav? How do you handle your surplus?
So,
Yes.
what,
Everyone make it short and sweet.
so basically what we are doing is, there was a recent project which Nikhil D did.
Who did?
Nikhil Dudani, he's a stylist. So what he did was he connected with 5 brands where we gave him scraps and he did a line called Fawn, which they auctioned on Instagram. And so in last 10 years, all the waste which we have never thrown it, everything is in-house. And we make sure we use it, either we do our shopping bags or we give it to students, or, basically the idea is obviously not really throw anything.
And you don't have to chop them into pieces. There's a great story that says all these couture gowns that don't get sold, couture, this is Western couture, they get chopped into pieces, and when you're sitting on a flight, you can bet your bottom dollar that the seats that you're sitting on's got shredded Dior's and Chanel's.
So there is a student who went from our college. So ma'am, this is answer to your question. So what she's doing, her case study is she goes to different designers and collect all the leftovers, reweave it, and give it back to the designers to recreate. And she's won some 20 lakhs on this, which is an international competition. And there's another brand, which is Doodle Age, which is doing like what Rahul is talking about. Yeah.
I think we are looking at a lot of sustainability figures from around the world. But to me, personally, I think India is the home of sustainability. And we've only got onto this bandwagon for the last 20 to 30 years. So we are still ahead of the game. And I think if we can take that advantage and move forward, I mean, women still wear saris which are 20-year-old. I wear mine which are 30-year-old. My daughter, when she got married, she wore an old sari of mine which we just redid, and she wore that. So it's not only just me, it's the next generation also which is ready to do that. So I think we are really ahead of the game in this whole sustainability business. All we need to do is to do what we are doing here today to a larger audience, to create more consciousness amongst the young, to connect them more with our craft and our culture. And I think we are still doing good. We do not buy 200 t-shirts for the heck of it, like Americans do. We do not throw away old clothing. I mean, I'm a teacher, and I always tell students, I start my Indian textiles with the story of Kantha. And I say, we used every little thread that there was. That's who we were. Every culture in this country makes rallis or gudaris, which is what? Which is old waste fabric. And you cannot find old textiles in homes because they reuse them, they recycle them, they never threw them away. They recycle them, they upcycle them, they reuse them. And I think if we can bring this consciousness amongst the young, amongst the consumer, and hopefully among the designers, then really our fashion sustainability is going to be very good. Thank you.
So Sabyasachi recently made a statement that, he was at an airport and this lady came up to him and...
I think I wrote about it.
Yes, you did. Lady came up to him, held his hand and said, thank you for giving my family and my workers around jobs, because of you, I'm able to reproduce your designs and sell them. And because of that, my home runs and so many other people's home runs. Now, that's one way to look at it. How easy is it to be as large-hearted about it as a upcoming, small, new designer, or even established designers? I don't think so many of us look at it in that way, that we are empowering other families. Essentially, they're copying your work, but are we really how easy is it to look at it that way as he did?
You become rich enough. Like Sabya.
That's exactly what I was wanting to say.
Yeah, I wrote about this.
Yeah.
I wrote about this, and
Yeah.
he said he was very proud that he is fueling a secondary economy of fakes, of his fakes, that is giving work, business, and money, and creating an industry of its own. But I'm not the designer.
I would like to say it like I welcome people to copy the process, not the product.
Yeah.
There's no point of something produced in handloom. You are doing disservice not to a brand. If I'm doing something on hand embroidery, you are producing computer embroidery, you are doing disservice to the thousands of karigars who are day and night working with this skill, and that is where things are going wrong. Please welcome, copy the process. I will teach you the process. Then you copy the product. The process comes first.
I'm an investment banker, so right through this talk, what was running through my mind is the economics of it. And until we are able to influence demand, a lot of the changes that you're talking about will not happen organically, because end of the day, the designers, the karigars, everybody needs to earn money, right? The demand happens from people like us, or not the people who buy, maybe you, people who buy pantaloon and lifestyle. And when will they go and buy a garment? When they think it's cool or it's aspirational. What I think, and you were just answering that, right? You asked this question about plagiarism and inspiration. Instead of fighting plagiarism constantly, you guys can embrace it and say that, okay, I know you will copy me. Let me copyright it. Okay, this is my design. If somebody can create it, make a cheaper version, which you get a royalty for, and which can go to common people, and that can be sold. And embrace Bollywood. Tell Bollywood to talk about it. Talk about a 500 rupee garment which is helping the artisan.
Just add this here, people who copy us, they are 100 times richer than us. They have to have state-of-art computer embroidery machine somewhere in Surat, who copies what we produce with hand, what my weavers and embroiderers produce in villages through their hand, because everything can be done on computer. We do thread work, you can copy in computer. This is all about people to understand what they want to buy. Something which can run somebody's house, or something which can ruin somebody's life. So this is all about people. And very honestly, again I'm saying, if we cannot afford a handloom sari, it's fine, we do not buy it. It's not going to make our life or livelihood on stake. But to sell a handloom sari is entire family, their existence is on the stake. So copying a handloom sari on a power loom is the biggest sin which anybody can do in today's world.
Yeah, but what essentially, talking about the fact that khadi is not fun, right? That's what you kept saying. The point is, for the average consumer, it's not,
average, yeah.
right? So the point is that you have to make it fun, you have to make it aspirational. And for that, you need design, and which is what maybe your CSR activity can be. The designers need to contribute to that, to make cheaper fashion available, and have icons.
It's a very, I think maybe from where you are sitting, you see it like that, but when you come on this side of the table, you'll see it's a little flawed. Very quickly, so somebody copied my work, a big retail group, one of the biggest retail groups in Indian fashion and high fashion, not the pantaloons, mainstream. every fourth person would come and tell me, okay, and it's very generic. And again, I did go to I went to Anand and Anand, and there is a fabric which we've created. It's called Kinji. We've already consumed almost 1,000 meters of the fabric, maybe more. It has a pleated stretch in it, which is done entirely on a hand loom. And when you look at it, it does look a little similar to Pleats Please, which is Miyake's. But the difference is we have done the entire process on the hand loom. They've done it industrially. We have documented everything. We've gone by the book. When we went there, they gave me a list of, no, not differences. They gave me a list of conditions, and there is an entire process which you need to take. So, for example, you can't copyright if you have been in a public domain more than a certain duration of time. There are multiple things. Now, if I'm creating 100 designs in a year, the amount of which I really need to spend to do that is not literally viable. I would say, okay, who's copying? You can't do it. And they have lawyers, they have a full team sitting on it. How much can I afford? I would rather focus on, what I'm actually creating. And he's right. It's more about the process.
We are actually, I again cannot take a name of brand. It's a brand which probably 90% of women of India, they consume from them. It's a brand.
Take the name.
No. I don't, because legal thing is going on right now. So that I don't take, they also fine people in that way. So they consider also that they have made a mistake. So what happens in the copyright law, because I've studied entire law, is if I did not produce anything in an industrial process and my production volume is less than 50 pieces per colorway per style, my thing without putting copyright is always protected for me. I can go and sue anybody and take compensation for that. That's what we are doing. Even if I am not even 1/10 size of that company, but I take them on and get the compensation done and will make sure that nobody else does it. But the problem happens with a known company, this is very simple to do. But the problem happens with the small time retailers, they might be sourcing something from Surat, where Surat, this crorepati sitting over there with his big setup of machine embroidery. Even the photographers who click our fashion show, we always feel, oh my God, so many photographers are there. Most of the photographers selling the CDs for 5,000 rupees to these guys. To be able to quickly, I did my show 2 days back, but I know right now somebody on CAD is already taking out all the motifs and putting it in punching, it's called punching, on computer embroidery to produce that in yardages of yardage. I really feel this is a disservice to sustainability. This is a disservice. When I talk of slow fashion, I am talking about slow consumption at the same time. This is not going to help the world. The way fashion being consumed. You are just feeling happy about buying 100 t-shirts? I'm sorry. You are being an idiot if you're buying 100 t-shirts together. It might be a better idea to I pick up one t-shirt, use it for 10 years. That's better. This Troy has created the jacket for me, Troy Costa, and this 5-year-old, he has created, I try to be fit so that I can keep wearing this jacket everywhere. I wear these clothes like uniform. One pair of shoes I've been wearing for last 3 years now, and I don't repeat, even a show anywhere I go. So I think that's how the consumption has to happen. Even if I can, it's almost like I'm the richest guy in Delhi and I can buy all the food available in Delhi. Do I have right because I have money to buy all the food? It's almost like that. You cannot consume all the resources even if you have money, which are available for entire generation, for future generations.
Okay, here's the last question.
I had a brief comment. I see a lot of discussion on economics and I somehow come from that field. One thing is that we have very clear labor laws, but understand that the laws of the society always run over the laws of the country everywhere around the world, and especially in India. And it is actually what you can actually achieve in a zone, because the standard of living in every zone in this country, like every other part of the world, is different. And I remember when I was working in the World Bank in DC 20 years back, there used to be debates in Washington Post about the way Chinese goods infiltrate the US markets and the way the army and the other people who are not paid are actually being used to produce some of these goods. Now was US ready to let go of that less purchasing power capability of people buying in the US, looking after what is happening to certain people? UN did make a noise. Now the thing is that, you see, if a weaver feels that his earning, his cost of living is much lower in a certain zone, he's ready to go for a price. And that's what we talk about market mechanisms. Labor laws and labor restrictions do create a framework, but then they actually distort market mechanisms. And so are we ready to go into distorted markets and not let into market mechanisms? Second, lastly, the debate which was happening just a second before. You see, where have all designs come from? There have been some weavers around the world making some of them in the past as well. If they come up and say the same thing, that I have the copyright issue, then what will happen? What, in my sense, is what you talked about in the last question was, if you're wanting to inspire, if you're wanting to grow, you have to be continuously creating, devising, innovating. And if you're able to do that, you are able to keep these people who actually copy off the market. If you do not do, or you say, oh, I made a diesel engine 40 years back, let me live for the next 50 years. I made a design, let me earn for it for the next 10 years. I'm sorry, my dear friends, it doesn't work. And no law, nothing can actually protect it happen. It's a question of your own innovation, taking that forward. Every design has come from somewhere or the other. You also, as designers also, me as a researcher, I also get my inspiration from something which is there. I normally quote it in my work, some people don't quote it in their work. So it's a question of, if I'm able to improvise it, as a designer myself as well, I think I'm able to do justice. It should not be constraining, it should be encouraging and growing, in my opinion.
Very honestly, in economics-wise, I want to also make a comment. The way market dynamics, the way all the governments are working to fuel more and more economy is highly unsustainable. We do create things which are very original at the same time. Sunflower existed from ages, but when Van Gogh said, in a way, sunflower is mine, he made it his own. Intellectual properties do exist. People do spend their energies. Like for this show, I'm just sharing this with you. We have spent from our pocket in research and development almost 2 crore rupees before putting the show. And the research development, all this gone like 2 minutes by somebody copying it. This does not justify this kind of economy, I'm sorry. No, this is stealing. It's almost like market dynamics will work. People can loot shops outside, almost what is happening in Paris. No, people need money, they will loot your shop, they will steal your car. No, that's still not justified. It's ultimately stealing. You're stealing somebody's ideas. You're stealing somebody who's put that in public domain for whatever reason it is. And I really feel that we cannot justify it. And second thing is, to talk about sustainability, we have to get our economics right. We have to relook at it, how education has been working. We have to relook at it, what actually growth means. Growth can be a wrong cell creating cancer also. Somehow our growth is a bit more cancerous than anything else, how the modern world is growing.
Yeah, can we leave on a happier note? Which is to say, first of all, thank you for being here. I think our biggest takeaway is that if you don't want to be copied, go slow. Make the process so long that the plagiarist will just bypass.
You still get copied.
But I think it's wonderful to know that what we've all come down to is the provenance of your clothes is very important. Forever we look at works of art on our walls and we talk about the provenance and we value that work of art, but we do not give the same kind of credit to the workmanship and the craftsmanship that involves multiple hands, homes, economies, and I think it's important to give that due respect. And on that note, thank you very much for being here. We are around, so if you have other questions that you would like to ask, please grab us outside. And I would love to say thank you again, Sachi, for doing this. Thank you very much, Imperial Hotel, Radio Mirchi, Doordarshan that's here, all our friends who've supported, and of course to the 2 brilliant designers who have our flag floating high.